Hello again. Something which I've increasingly noticed is the way that we are routinely urged to reject the evidence of our senses, and indeed our common sense, in order to pander to the latest craze in ecology or anti-racism or whatever it is. April was distinctly chilly and damp in Britain this year, and yet the Meteorological Office solemnly assured us that it was one of the warmest Aprils on record. I'm confidently expecting that after the end of this month, which, by the way, comes today, the Met Office will probably be telling us that May has been exceptionally warm as well, and that it's a harbinger of global warming. A similar stunt is being pulled with the natural world. I wonder how many viewers have heard warnings that there are fewer birds about in this country than was the case a few years ago, and that this or that wild animal is in danger of extinction, whether hedgehogs, dormice, or whatever. For most of us, the reality is so hugely at odds with this narrative that either we must accept the evidence of our eyes, or else block our ears and cover our eyes so that we can believe what various BBC presenters on Springwatch or Countryfile tell us is happening in the country. Let me run through a few examples of what I'm talking about. In the 1950s, nobody living in the cities and towns of Britain ever saw a fox. If you grew up in the city or the town, they were the stuff of fairy tales. There was absolutely no chance of your encountering a fox at all in real life. Then, sometime in the 1980s, they became as common as can be, and they were hanging round the streets, first in the suburbs and then later in the very centre of London. Today, the sight of a fox is commonplace all over the country. Or take deer. The thumbnail to this video shows a housing estate on the edge of Romford in East London. It looks like a still from some post-apocalyptic thriller where wild animals are gradually reclaiming the deserted cities. But these are urban deer and they're also on the increase. There are now more deer in Britain than at any time since the Norman Conquest in 1066. Does that sound like a decline in wildlife? In the 1960s, otters were on the verge of extinction in England. Now they are reported in every single English county. Does anybody remember wild boar and beavers living in this country 40 or 50 years ago? There are so many wild boar now that there's serious talk about culling them, and beavers are cropping up all over the place. These are just a few random instances. In London in the 1950s, you would typically see sparrows, blackbirds and starlings, and that's about it. I remember when herons were, like foxes, something you only saw in picture books. I've seen herons lately in Regent's Park and elsewhere in central London, and they're to be seen all over London now. Along with herons, red kites are now common too. And don't even get me started on the parrots. In short, Britain is teeming with exotic wildlife to an extent which was unheard of a few years ago. It's very exciting. None of this prevents ecologists and various experts warning us that the country's wildlife is in free fall and that this or that species is in terminal decline. As I say, to believe this, we would really have to ignore completely the evidence of our own eyes and ears.